Hey everyone. Yeah, I haven't done this in a while. This is basically a Topics on My Mind podcast here on YouTube. Of course, I have a podcast on SoundCloud, but I gotta pay a premium just to do that, or just to continue that there. So for right now, enjoy it here on YouTube, and hopefully this won't be as long as what I originally intended to come back with, because the last one I came back with was about 2 hours. So let's talk about a few topics right now, shall we? Let's talk about let's you know let's talk about first topic here, the college football playoffs. Now I've talked about this before in another video. Now I know the college football playoffs aren't for another few months. We still got most of the season to go. The season really doesn't start wrapping up until at least the end of next month and the beginning of December. But and mostly with the finale being the Army-Navy game. But let's pause for a second, folks. Let's pause and realize something about the college football playoff system that I've mentioned before, and it's really, really bugged me. And it's the fact that they decide every year to use different college bowl sites and different college bowl games to achieve this playoff, to achieve this 4-team tournament. I mean, here's what they're doing, folks, in case you're new to this. In case you're new to this, or you're wondering why two teams faced each other last year in the national championship, even after they won the bowl games. Here's what's going on. Okay, here's what's going on. Every year, one site is chosen for the national championship. But to get there, they've decided to use 2 bowl games as semifinal games. Now, the bowl games they have chosen to be rotated in the system are the Chick-fil-A Bowl, formerly the Peach Bowl, the Rose Bowl, the Cotton Bowl, the Orange Bowl, the Sugar, and the Fiesta. Yeah. Chick-fil-A, Peach Bowl, Rose Bowl, Orange Bowl, Sugar Bowl, Fiesta, Cotton. Those are the bowl games. Now you might ask yourself, well, why is the Cotton in there? It really wasn't a big-time bowl game. Oh yeah, it was a big-time bowl game. Don't get me wrong, it was. It was a big-time bowl game. It was a big-time bowl game, folks. But the thing is, even if it wasn't as significant, even if it wasn't as important as the Big 4 bowl games, which were the Orange, Fiesta, Sugar, and Rose, still, it's a bowl game that does not need to have itself used as a semifinal game for the winner to go to a national championship. I mean, if there's anything that the FCS system has correct, is you have the top seeds playing at home against whoever they face. And I think that's what the FBS needs to do. I think that's what the college football playoff system needs to do. You need to switch it around to where the 2 top teams out of those 4 teams, host the semifinal games at home against their opponents. You need the number 1 team facing the number 4 team at home. You need the number 2 team facing the number 3 team at home. For example, right now, if the college football playoff was to start now, depending on what happened this weekend, Alabama is looked at as number 1, right? Let's say they're number 1, and let's say, because the season's still young, but it's getting into the home stretch, if you will. Let's say that by the end of the year, the number 4 ranked team for the playoff, let's just throw it out there. Let's say it could be, I don't know, who do we throw out there? Who would be a surprise this year? Who do we throw out there? Who's a big surprise? Let's say Oklahoma. Let's say Oklahoma is ranked number 4 in the playoff system, which a lot of people doubt would happen, but let's say they are. Well, let's say Baylor. Okay, let's do that. Let's say Baylor is ranked number 4. the playoff system. Let's say they're ranked number 4. Logically, and this is the best way to do it, Baylor would have to go to Alabama and face Alabama there. Alabama would host Baylor at home in a semifinal game. It would make logical sense. And then the winner of that could go to the national championship, and you wouldn't have to interrupt a bowl game. Aim just to do that, and you open the door for other conference and at-large teams to get in. It makes more sense, and I think those listening that have been kind of controversial, not been controversial, but have been sour on it. I think those that have been sour on it, have had their differences about it, would agree. It makes more sense. Another example is number 2, Ohio State. Let's say, it could happen. So let's say Clemson is number 3. Clemson would have to go to Ohio State to face them. And it makes sense. Like I said, it opens the door. Because then you'd have the top teams hosting the semifinal games at home. You would have the 2 top teams. As of right now, if the playoffs were to end right now, you would have Ohio State hosting Clemson at home, 2 and 3, and like I said, I just threw it out there. Baylor, or maybe even Nebraska, if they were to rank up at number 4 in the playoff rankings, would be facing Alabama if things were to end today. If things were to end today, logically that would make sense, right? Or Washington Huskies, they're ranked what, number 5? So let's say Washington faces Alabama. Washington gets in there, they're ranked number 5. If the playoffs were to start today, they'd go to Alabama as the number 4 rank. Or Clemson. It makes sense. For example, number 2 faces number 3. Right now, people say it's Clemson or Michigan. Clemson or Michigan would go to Ohio State. If it's Michigan, then Michigan gets an automatic rematch almost a week later or so, or a month later or so, against Ohio State in Ohio State. Or if it's Clemson, then Clemson goes to Ohio State. It makes sense. Makes a lot of sense. Or what you could do to really, build up the hype for the national championship is you could have those college playoff semifinals take place the same day as Army and Navy. You could do that. Because in that way, those 2 top teams get an additional home game, and the 2 other teams, the third and fourth ranked playoff teams, get another game as well, even if they have to travel to the 2 top teams' home stadiums. It makes sense, and then, like I said, it opens the door for those other bowl games, for those 2 other bowl games you would use as playoff semifinal destinations, as regular bowl games again. It would open the door for other conference champions or at-large teams to get a big payday for the school. Schools that, teams and schools that deserve to go there, but yet can't go there because of the freaking playoff system. Because right now, the way the playoff system is being done, you're preventing teams that have decent records, that have earned the right to be in a New Year's Day or a pick-6 game, and they don't get it. This would allow it to happen. Is what it would do. It would allow it to happen, well, at least for 2 teams. Because what you could do is a constellation prize. The 2 teams that don't win the semifinals can meet each other in one of the other bowl games. For example, like I said, let's say Alabama was to host Washington, okay? Or even Nebraska or Oklahoma or whoever. Let's say Alabama doesn't win. Let's say they get upset. And then let's say Ohio State, who's ranked number 2, loses to Clemson or even loses to Michigan. You could have Alabama and Ohio State probably meet in, let's say, the Fiesta Bowl as a constellation of saying, hey, at least you get to play another day. You used to get to play another game, and you'll get a championship out of it. You won't get the national championship, but you'll get a bowl championship. Constellation prize, there you go. It opens the door for the other bowl game that would be used as a semifinal game to bring in other at-large teams that deserve, like I say, an opportunity to be in it because of the record that they've earned throughout the season. It works. I mean, let's say Alabama and Ohio State were to win. The team that loses to them, let's say Clemson loses to Ohio State, and let's say Washington loses to Alabama, or Oklahoma loses to Alabama, whoever. Well, let's look at it this way. Let's say Clemson and Washington lost their games. Let's say Washington went to Alabama, lost. Clemson goes to Ohio State and loses. Then Washington and Clemson can get the constellation of being in a game, being put in one of the Pick Six games, like let's say the Fiesta or the Sugar, as a constellation, knowing that, hey, even though they lost, they still get to play another game with the opportunity of winning a bowl championship, or winning the championship of that bowl game. It may not be the national championship, but it would still be the championship. It would still be a championship, just like I mentioned earlier. And to me, it makes more sense, business-wise, to allow this to go in this direction because, one, like I said, you open up an additional bowl game for two additional at-large or conference champion teams that don't get into the playoffs to play in that bowl game because they have a record that they have because of, they've accomplished what they needed to do. They have a winning record. They've, either won the conference or by being at large, they've had a decent win-loss record against strong opponents. There you go. And then, like I said, you can use the other bowl game as a constellation prize for the teams that don't get to the national championship. It makes sense. And then that way you're not wasting two bowl games as semifinal games. Yeah, what are you saying? I mean, yeah, what's the point of it? Oh, the Fiesta Bowl champion takes on the Sugar Bowl champion? Or the Cotton Bowl champion takes on the Chick-fil-A champion? What sense does that make? No disrespect to those games. But they're more traditionally viewed and enjoyed as bowl games, not treated as semifinal games. So again, my suggestion is to use the home stadiums of the top two teams as the host sites for the semifinal games. Then that way, whoever wins those semifinal games goes to the national championship. And as a constellation, you allow the two teams that don't make it to compete in a Pick Six bowl game, like the Fiesta or the Sugar or the Cotton or the Rose or whatever. And then the two teams that do win, they go to the national championship. And then you also open the door with one of those other bowl games that would have been used as a semifinal game for two at-large teams that have a strong win-loss record that's made them eligible enough to be chosen. It makes sense. It makes sense. And I think everybody listening knows that. So that's all I'm really going to say. That's all I'm really going to say. Now on to the next topic. Let's get on to the next topic. And that is something that I deal with at my job at this time of year. In fact, I've already had people buying a few of these items just to get ahead. The topic is, does Christmas come a little too early for a lot of people? You got to wonder that question. You got to wonder if it comes a little too early for a lot of people. Because it seems you can't even get out of the month of August or even out of the month of September, and stores are already displaying Christmas items. Why? They're not going to sell much. People don't start really getting into the Christmas spirit, if you will, until at least late October, the beginning of November. Matter of fact, 2 weeks from tomorrow is when people are going to start getting into it. And it's the truth. It is the truth, and people know that. And stores and retailers know that, but yet they still do it. Heck, it's not even retail stores either. Right now, if you go to your music choice and you go to Sounds of the Season, you'll get Halloween music. Give it a day or two after Halloween and you end up getting Christmas music. Maybe even the day after. Why? Because they want to get everybody in the mood. And that's great. I guess retail stores want to get people ahead of the schedule. And that's great. But what good does it really do? I mean, be honest with yourselves. The Christmas shopping doesn't really start till Black Friday. Black Thursday evening, depending on how you look at it. But it really doesn't start to that time frame. So why? Why do retail stores or even music channels like Music Choice do this? Because they want to get ahead. They want to get it out and done with and not wait to the last minute, in my opinion. That's why they do it. They don't do it for any other reason except for that. I know it. People listening to this, they know it. And it's the truth. It is the truth. By far the truth. That's the reason. But you know the biggest problem, though, is when you have young ones and they start seeing all this Christmas stuff at the same time they see Halloween stuff, and basically it's hyperactive overload. Because as soon as they see that kind of stuff, what parent has a chance of controlling their kid in the store sometimes, with all due respect? Because there are a lot of parents that do control their kids. But what chance do some other parents or grandparents or uncles or aunts have of controlling kids in the store when they see that stuff? None, because they go absolutely bonkers. I dealt with a couple yesterday. A young couple had kids who they got some toys for. And the father tried to say, oh, well, if you do this, Santa ain't going to bring you anything. These kids, I'll tell you nowadays, they're quick to react. They're quick to give you a reaction. And according to what the mother said, the kid responded something like, oh, yeah, he will. Or something like that. I don't know. The fact is, when you get started early, when stores get started early on the Christmas stuff, on the Halloween stuff, that's one thing. Because you know you're going to have a lot of costumes coming in and you want to get them all out, you want to sell them, you want to get more you want to make room for more that comes in. That's one thing. The Christmas items, on the other hand, Jiminy Christmas. It's like, give us time. We got one holiday at a time, okay? I'm telling you right now, come November, things are really going to change because of the fact that a lot of people, especially in the next few weeks, in the few weeks that follow, are going to start getting not Christmas, but Thanksgiving stuff. That's the truth. That is the truth. You and I know it. Still, it boggles the mind. Even those that work, even those that are in charge of said stores, it boggles the mind. Why? Why do kids do this? Why does this happen? Why are retailers online, physically, in-store, online, why are we starting so soon? And it's basically the answer is to get ahead. You ain't getting ahead any more than you are. And that's a fact. That's all I'm going to say on that topic. Last but not least, let's talk about Chicago. The Chicago Cubs. Well, what can we say? Tied at 1-1 with the Dodgers. If you're not a fan of the Dodgers, you're a Cub fan right now. The last thing, if you're a fan of the Padres, you're a fan of the Giants, you're a fan of the Diamondbacks, the last thing you want to see is the Dodgers go to the World Series. Heck, if you're a fan of the Angels, that's the last thing you want to see. And you know what? A lot of people are saying that after last night, the Cubs, well, I think some people, like on Mike and Mike this morning, are indicating that the Cubs are getting into that groove of, and it doesn't hurt, and it's not helping. Well, you know what? I doubt they're going to, well, you know what? A lot of people say that when they get to a certain part, they start to choke, and that's part of the curse. Well, you know what? Let me say something about that Chicago Cub curse. That curse is a bunch of, how do they say it in Ireland? A bunch of malarkey. Yeah, that curse is nothing but BS. That curse, to me, doesn't exist. It does not exist. It is not real. It doesn't exist. It's a myth. It's a legend that needs to cease. Now, a lot of people will say, well, if the Cubs win this year, it will. Yeah, that might be true. When one thinks about it, the Cubs haven't been there in almost 110 years. 108 years, actually, since the last time they won a World Series. But still, this curse, it's nothing. It's psychological. It's mental. You know what? That mentality, it's gone. The Cubs, the Chicago Cub fans, and the Chicago Cub players need to wake up and realize that curse does not exist. It's never existed. If you want the truth, it goes back to something I said about the NFL. Back with the NFL, I did this video where I talked about if NFL teams' seasons are predetermined. Same could be applied for Major League Baseball if you think about it. Chicago Cubs have proven 2 years in a row they are one of the best, if not the best team in baseball right now. And yet they always find a way to choke. Well, maybe this is because they're told to choke when you think about it. Maybe it's because they're scripted. Make it look real, make it look legit, make it look close, and then in the end, drop it, choke on it. All because they want to keep that myth, that legend, that curse alive. And why do they want to keep that curse alive? Because they make money off it. That's why. And the Chicago Cub fans need to realize that that curse, it's all it is. It's nothing more than a scam to make money. It does not exist. The Chicago Cub players know it does not exist. But certain players, if not the whole team, and this goes for all 32 Major League Baseball teams, they know this. They are told, go out there, have a good game, today you're going to win. But when it gets to playoff time or gets close to trying to get in the playoffs, you choke, you lose. Or you succeed, you win. It's all predetermined, folks. Let's be honest. It doesn't matter how it's done, but it's predetermined in some way, some shape, form, or fashion. Be honest. It's the truth. That's why teams that look like they're red hot and are unbeatable seem to choke in the end, because they're told to. It's not good, and it's not fair, folks. It's not fair to you as fans that pay your hard-earned money to see these teams play, and it's not fair to the players. They should be allowed to go out there and play the game the way it should be played. No predeterminations, nothing. Let them go out and see who the best team is. Now you might say baseball is more legit than football, and sometimes more legit than basketball. And you're right, it might be. But there is still some predetermination that occurs during that game. You can't tell me it's not. And this is why when people talk about wrestling being predetermined and scripted, yeah, you have a legit gripe on that. But how predetermined and scripted is it compared to certain moments in baseball or football or basketball? Not that big of a difference, is there? That's why this whole Chicago Cubs curse is nothing more than non-existent. It is nothing more than a money-grabbing myth. And this year, if the Cubs want to prove to the world that they are for real and that this curse is nothing more than a myth, it's nothing more than a money-grabbing scheme or scam, then they need to beat LA. And they need to win the World Series, just like they could have done a year ago, just like they've done on previous occasions they've had this opportunity. Yeah, baseball may be more legit than basketball and football at times when it comes to the outcome. But there are certain times, especially at this time of year, where that is put in question, my friends. So that's all I'm going to say on that, on this Chicago Cubs curse, because you know what? This year, that curse is non-existent. It's over. It does not exist. It is a myth. It's a legend. It's a money-grabbing scheme. Think about it this way. Remember that infamous incident in Chicago where the Cubs were close to getting to the World Series that one year, and that fan holds out his hand and grabs that baseball and takes it in? Do you not think that fan was not planted? He was. That guy was planted there to grab the ball. He was told, if a ball comes in your direction, I'm sure he wasn't the only one. I'm sure there were other people planted in several parts of Wrigley Field. And they were probably all told the same thing. if a ball comes in your direction that might be catchable so that the Cubs win and all that, interfere with it, grab it, or do so. He was told. He and others were told to do something. And you and I and everybody listening knows that. That's why this Chicago Cubs curse is a myth. It is a money-grubbing scam. It's non-existent. It's never been real, and it needs to stop. That's all I'm going to say on it. That, my folks, is my Topics on My Mind podcast.